Frankie, certain things happen when a new manager takes over at a club. And one thing that happens immediately is transfer rumours. Because a new guy's gone in there, he's going to want to get his new players in the next transfer window, regardless of who he is, what club he's at, what the circumstances are. He's going to want to get his new players in. And I think usually that's quite valid. So we've been linked to a few players in the last week since Nuno's rocked up. And the latest one is the Real Madrid player, Endrick. What do you make of this?
Yeah, well, there's three of them, wasn't there? Endrick, Estavo, and Guilherme. We seem to have picked the runt of the litter, if you like. Maybe a little bit harsh, but he's certainly the one who isn't doing as much of the others. So now we're going after the one who is or has been being able to have an effect on football matches. But like you say, he sort of fell out a little bit of favour, to be honest. And
Yeah,
I'm not surprised he's become available, you know?
I was going to just add the context. I actually seen the rumour yesterday that Xabi Alonso told him he's not part of his plans and he can go in January. So I seen yesterday that Real Madrid were prepared to let him go. And I remember we got linked to him sort of in the summer. Football Asia went on Clam and Booze and told him that Endrick had been offered on loan to West Ham, and West Ham weren't interested, or some. I think that was the story anyway. So West Ham and Endrick, it wasn't the first time I'd seen it. And I seen it. I thought, imagine, just as a little bit of a laugh to oneself, that they were linked to it. So I had a little look, and he's been on the bench the last 5 games for Real Madrid and not come on. So he's not had a minute under Alonso this season. So he's not got onto the pitch. So whilst him joining West Ham feels a bit ridiculous, him leaving Real Madrid feels quite realistic, believable, and sensible for a player like that. He's going to need to go get minutes somewhere. And if you are going to loan him out, you're going to want to put him somewhere that he's almost guaranteed to be playing every single game. So are we convincing ourselves of something that's a little bit stupid, or...
Well, what do you call it, Geo? A lazy link? Isn't that what you normally call it? It is a bit of a lazy one. Well, I think we know we're desperate for some firepower.
Yeah.
I think Arsenal reiterated that and showed us that the way we're going to play football, we need to add some energy and something different to that forward line, or otherwise it's going to be painful. So we need it. He's a man who looks like he's becoming available, but there's so many other clubs that Real Madrid or clubs like Barcelona in the Liga normally put these players out to, and it's normally places like PSG, teams like that. They're normally the places that they end up. For someone like him, West Ham in the Premier League, I don't think would be attractive to him, to be perfectly honest. I think they have such an ego. He's been at Real Madrid. He was touted as being this next big thing. What would he want to do at West Ham? Come and go into a forward line where he's isolated up top, playing in a low block team? It would be a completely awful move for him. So, and not only that, is he the sort of player who's going to lead a line in the Premier League on his own? I'm not even sure he's the right man for the job. As while he is a good player, and I think he's got bags of talent, I'm not sure he's a good fit for us either, to be perfectly honest. So,
shall we file it under pinch of salt?
That's probably a very good idea.
Right, before we move on to the Arsenal game next week, because it's international break, next week when we do this podcast, we're going to be doing a bit of a Q&A, really. So if you've got any questions for next week's podcast, please leave them in the comments below, and we will answer every single one of them. About West Ham, about football, just pop them in the comments, and we'll do it, and that'll be next week's podcast. Thank you very much to anyone who does submit any questions, because without them, there wouldn't be a podcast. Frankie, Saturday got beat by Arsenal. What was your takeaways from the match?
I went into it with a bit of hope. I really did think that he might create a bit of a plan. I think we all knew he was going to try and make us hard to beat and try and not concede. 0-0 at halftime seemed like almost a certainty. That seemed like the game plan that we was going to have, and then try and maybe a little bit more adventurous in the second half. But for all of the positives I felt defensively we probably showed the best defensive showing we'd shown all season, to be honest. I feel like we did look a bit more organised. I just never have seen the point in playing football matches with no attempt to try and hurt them, give them a threat, give them something to think about. I was shocked, Geo, if I'm honest, that Füllkrug was leading that line. I thought we'd seen it. I thought we'd seen enough of it. And I really thought that while maybe on paper, Füllkrug's supposed to be this man who can put himself about and be up there on his own and still use his strength and power to and he drops deep and tries to pick up the ball. I just felt like it was screaming out for Callum Wilson, this one. I just thought his Premier League knowledge, experience, someone who kind of knows what it's all about, might have just been able to do a bit more than Füllkrug. So I was surprised when we saw him up top again. And then just not having a single shot on target for me is just almost unforgivable, Gio, because, you see these other teams, and I know Crystal Palace ended up coming unstuck for the first time or whatever it was, 21, 22 games at the weekend. But, they went to Liverpool or played Liverpool and gave them a real good game. And, they just were value for money. They just went out there and just tried to go a bit toe to toe with them. The last thing we needed probably was a spanking in that game. And I understand why he might have gone in it, just damage limitation. But we pay our money, we go, the fans go. Give us something to try and get something out of the game. I just feel like we just had no threat, no intention of having a threat. And I just don't really like that type of football, to be honest. Good to see the youngsters come on. Again, I'd rather see him in a game again when they can affect the game, when they can add something positive. It was an easy thing for him to do. I know people saying, it was really good to see, but it was such an easy thing. The game's gone. We ain't going to get back in it. Just chuck the two of them on there. I want to see them in a scenario where they could add something to the game. You don't want to just keep seeing them come on when games are over and games are gone, because that ain't no good for them either. So, look, it was good to see him out there. Good to see him get minutes on the pitch. But, yeah, I want to see him more being utilised in moments where, they might be able to come on and think, I can do something here. As a youngster, looking at that and coming out there, and I've got to go through the motions a little bit. And, all the other players, Paqueta for me was he drove me mad in that game. I just feel like he had one of them ones where he cruised around and really just was so uninterested. So, yeah, frustrating from him. But I guess that we write it off, and Brentford's a totally different test for us. But we certainly need to see more from that Brentford game.
Yeah, I think one thing, it was at Palace, not at Liverpool. Before
that's why I changed from...
your point remains valid, but before someone picks you up on it, I think for the youngster thing, I've got two things. One, he brought Potts on away to Everton when the game was in the balance. I think he's showed that he's willing to play Potts when the game's there to be won and there's something to take from it. I think the Marshall one's valid, but it's only his second game. But like you said, let's see if he brings him on against Brentford, against Leeds, against Burnley, or even starts him in one of those games. And that, I don't feel like it was a PR stunt, though. However, how many times in the past have we been in a situation where we're 2 or 3 down and there's youngsters sat on the bench and the manager brings on the experienced players, or Danny Ings would come on the bench. He's like, hang on a minute, what's the point in this? Bring on the youngster and give him the experience up front. So actually, I think even if it was just because the game's over, let's put Marshall on, in a way, I'm okay with that, Frankie, because it's still an improvement on what we've had. And I think that's sometimes when a youngster gets his opportunity. So it's like, well, you got half an hour. Let's see what you got. And I think he did all right, Marshall.
I'm going to throw something else at it, Joe. It wasn't probably a topic of conversation that we had for this podcast, but I feel like it's something that needs to be discussed, and a quite valid one. I'm just so cautious at the moment. And the Nuno thing doesn't bother me. I think he is the right manager for the right time. And I do believe that he will get us ticking to some degree, and we will get ourselves out of trouble. And hopefully that's sooner rather than later, because the longer it goes on, if we'd have gone bottom, we've been here before, that when you're in that bottom and, you pick up points and everyone else wins around you, it's horrible. So, but everything he's saying, all of his press conferences that he keeps talking about the fans, just feels very engineered by people who know the unrest that's going on at the moment. And I see a lot going on. I thought he was a man who, we've seen he's butted heads with owners previously. Look, he's never going to come and do that from day one. He's got to, you know, that's never going to happen. But just feels like a lot of what he's saying, he says it and it doesn't seem sincere to me. He says it and he goes, oh, but us and the fans, we've got to get together, and us and the fans, we've got to be closer. It just, for me, it just feels like something that has been scripted, has been pre-written, has been something that they've turned around to him and said, look, we've got a little bit of hostility at the moment and we need this to go away as quickly as possible. And the things that we need you to be saying, one, is really get on the fan side and keep mentioning the fans and how important they are and this, that, and the other. You don't even know us yet. So, like, I'm just a little bit like, why is that coming from him? And then also with regards to bringing the youngsters on like he did in the Arsenal game, it just, again, is it just something that he's doing because it's another thing someone's got in his ear and said, oh, the way that you can keep them happy is by bringing on the younger players because they really like them. Like I said, yeah, if he starts Callum Marshall in a game because Fulkrug really is doing nothing at the moment, and he feels like Callum Wilson, well, we didn't bring him on against Arsenal. So no. If we go on that Brentford game, if he doesn't feel Fulkrug's the man, if he really believed in the fact that Marshall should come on ahead of Callum Wilson against Arsenal away from home, if he don't start Fulkrug, he should start Marshall. That's how I see it.
It could be a bit of horses for courses, though, in the sense that, you know, Brentford at home and Arsenal away are a complete contrast of games. And you might have thought that Marshall was the right type of striker for that situation, which I would agree with. But you might feel like Wilson's the right type of striker for Brentford at home, which is a different, you know, you'd imagine we will have more of the ball than we've had against Arsenal and Everton so far. There is a lot more pressure on us to win that game. I don't think there's pressure on us to have won either of those fixtures we've had so far under Nuno. But I think the pressure's there for the Brentford match. I think he's got to win that one. Like, well, I say Nuno's got to win it. What we, West Ham, we need to win it. It's not, like I said, it's not a reflection of Nuno per se. If we don't win, it's not like he's going to get sacked for that. He's not under pressure. The club are under pressure. They need to get a win, and he's demanding dugout currently. In regards to what he's saying about supporters, I can't comment because I don't listen to them. But the only thing I could say is when I did my video with the Nottingham Forest fan, he said Nuno's press conferences are very copy and paste, like everyone's just the same. He said he said he feels like Nuno doesn't enjoy them. He doesn't really like doing them, so he just says the same thing over and over again. And I can understand why a manager or a head coach gets fed up doing press conferences when you're doing, in some instances, you're doing 2 a week. If you're playing European football, you're doing 2 press conferences a week, getting asked the same questions, probably. Certain journalists trying to catch you out to get you to snap. You know, look at Ange Postecoglou at the minute. He is biting. So you're a journalist, you're going in there thinking, hello, we're going to get you to snap. And I think Graham Potter got a bit of it as well towards the end of his time. So I can understand why he switches off a little bit. But I remember his first video. I did tune into his first one. And it was a bit by the club media. And I think they tried to tee him up to twerk for the fan base a little bit. I can't recall the exact question. It was something along the lines, oh, you need the fans on side, Nuno, or something like that. And he basically said, well, it's up to us to get them on side. We've got to give them a reason to trust us and to want to support us and to give them a team they can identify with and get their support. We've got to earn their support rather than just take it. So I like to think he's got the right means. And if he is constantly repeating that he needs the fans and stuff, I think that's every manager thing rather than a Nuno thing. I think everybody's probably saying it about most fan bases and stuff. It's just PR. That's why I don't tune into them, Frankie. Look, I don't like Nuno. I didn't tune into them under Potter, under Lopetegui, and I mean, I couldn't even hear what he was saying anyway. Under David Moyes, I rarely tune into any. If it's a special occasion, I would tune into Moyes' ones before the European games because I usually, at the end of it, I was usually a little bit fired up for the match. I was thinking, I'm having a bit of this. I'm ready for it now. So unless it's like a big event, I tend to avoid them because I could probably predict what they're going to say, if that makes sense. Oh, yeah, it's a hard fixture. Doesn't matter who you play. Oh, yeah, hard fixture. Like I said, if I was a journalist, I'd say, which ones are the easy ones then? You know,
Well, it's partly because we've always had such dull managers with no character about them. I tuned into his one so far because I thought like he had a bit of character about him. I did expect to just see something a little bit different. Look, I guess what I'm getting at is just a bit of consistency is what I want to see from him.
yeah,
And look, I'm not moaning. I'm not sitting here putting
I know.
negatives. I'm saying that I believe that this man will, get us out of trouble and we'll end up having a season, hopefully, where we're not looking over our shoulder too much. I do think he'll make us difficult to beat. I think we've seen some improvements on there, and that's all great. But again, he dropped James Ward-Prowse from the squad. And I said to you at the time, I hope it's not based on historical situations that you might have had with him, because it's a different scenario now. He's at West Ham and people see him as an important player and quite a good voice in the dressing room and stuff like that. So look, he's been dropped from the squad and literally just without even really being given a chance to train or being given a chance to prove his salt within the West Ham squad. So we've seen that happen, dropped, gone. The way Paqueta is at the moment, and just I see a man who isn't really that interested. Let's see if he's got does he carry the same thing? Does he turn around to him? I'm not talking about removing him from the squad. I'm not saying that Paqueta's too important. But I do feel like we're in a situation where Paqueta's got to show something against Brentford. And I mean, he's got to have a big performance, or otherwise I expect Nuno to turn around to him and say, sit the next one out, mate. Simple as that. And find a different solution to what's going on. And I know Nick and that over there said, not sure Paqueta works in this system. Whatever it is, I don't care what it is. But even if he doesn't work in the system, we still need to see a player who's giving everything for West Ham. And at the moment, I don't think I see that. So I'm hoping he gets a grip of it. Same with the Füllkrug thing. It's not really working. So come Brentford, I just expect to see some changes. I expect him to shake things up. I expect him to shuffle things a little bit. And I expect him to go, right, we've run it out the last couple of games. It hasn't quite worked. Let's go and see. Let's do this and see if this has a bit of a, sparks a bit of life into us. That's all I'm saying.
And ironically, I'm way to quote a manager here, but not a West Ham one. Oliver Glasner said this week, he was speaking about strategy, informations and stuff, obviously, because he's playing like this 3-4-2-1 and has been since he arrived at Palace. And he said, I'm only playing like that because it suits the players I've got. Says I would prefer to play 4-4-2. So that's my favourite formation. But the players I've got is best suited to what we're doing at the minute. So that's why we're playing what we're playing. He said at Frankfurt we played like this because of the players we had available. When I was at Wolfsburg, we played 4-4-2 because that suited the players I had available. And I think there's an element of that. If Paqueta's not going to fit with how we play under Nuno, then he's either got to adapt the way we play or, like you said, make a big decision, which is we're going to have to drop you and bring someone in that will suit the way that I play. I agree with what you said earlier, by the way, about the Arsenal one. I will just back you up on that, about how you were disappointed with no threat. And I agree. I said on the player ratings that if this was 6 months into Nuno, I'd have been pissed off with that. But because he's only been here a week, I'm willing to just write it off and give him the benefit of the doubt and shrug it off. And I have. Because the minute that full-time whistle went, Frankie, I was over it. I know you might feel different, but I was. I was like, whatever. On to Brentford, please. But there was no threat from us. And I know he doesn't have his players, but then he's not going to get any players until January at the earliest. We can't just write off October, November and December and say, well, he's not got his players. You can't do that. We'll be relegated before he gets his players in. If he gets any players in, he might get 1 or 2 in January. That's it. You're not doing a whole squad overhaul in the January transfer window. So he's going to have to work with what he's got here. And it was Arsenal, and that's why I'm going to give him the benefit of doubt. But I think I was maybe surprised / disappointed that, like, when we got like a free kick on the halfway line, we just went backwards with it all the time. And I thought, well, could you not just put Kilman and Mavpanos up and try and just go along with it and just treat it as a set piece and see if you can get something off the back of it and carry a bit of a threat? Because, watch Brentford against Man City. They carried a threat at times against Man City because they had a plan that would suit the players that they've got at the club to try and give them something. But because he's only been here a week, I'm not that bothered. I think we're utilising Füllkrug wrong. Now, this isn't me excusing Füllkrug's performances. I don't think he's been good enough. But I don't think he's like a traditional target man. I think we're utilising him like one. We're just launching the ball at him, going, there you are, do something. And I don't think that's how you get the best out of him. I think you have to get the players close to him. I think he's while he's big, I think he's better with the ball at the deck, believe it or not, and give it into him. And I think you need to get Bowen next to him and Somerville next to him. And against Arsenal and against Everton at times, he's so isolated. And that's something we've either got to change the way we play it or change the person. It's one of the two. What you can't do is continue to do what you're doing with him up front, because we know that's not going to work. So whether that's to go to Wilson or Marshall, or we change the way we're playing and get players closer to Fulkrug. And I think this is where, this run of games coming up. So I think it's important, because I think certainly 3 of the fixtures are winnable. Brentford at home, Leeds away, Newcastle at home, Burnley at home. We've got to be picking up, like, how many points would you say is the minimum expectation from that 4 games?
I think you need 6 minimum.
I reckon 7. I think we need. I think we need 7. I think I'm a bit nervous actually about these 4 games. While I felt nothing again about the Arsenal game, which is a bit of a shame, because we've won that fixture the last 2 years, and I quite like those fixtures usually, but this one was just wrong time. But the next 4, oh no, we've got to be up for this one. I don't know. I'm hoping Newcastle got a Champions League game the week before we play them as well, so that might give us a slight advantage going into that one. I don't like the fact that we're playing Brentford on a Friday, then Leeds on Brentford on Monday, Leeds Friday. By the way, that feels like a very quick turnaround for an unnecessary one as well, to only have that for like 3 days in between 2 games. I don't like that. That feels a little bit unfair on our part. But I think you can only play 5 Monday, Friday games in total through the season. I think you're limited to 5. And I think we've got 4 already scheduled. So I think between November onwards, I think we could only play on a Friday or a Monday once for the rest of the season. So maybe there's a slight advantage in that regards. But anyway, I reckon we need 7 points. Anything else you'd like to discuss before we disappear? Anything about Nuno? Any players in particular for good or bad reasons? Anything you want to chat about?
Yeah, no, not really. Paqueta's the only one I'm really calling out from the Arsenal game. When it's your talisman, when it's the man that you turn to make something happen, it's just one of those games you want him to produce that moment of magic. It's been a little while now since he put one of those little lofted balls over to Bowen or whatever. Just make something. Obviously he did against Chelsea. And that was, but that's what I would expect to see from him, those things. So just want him to get his head up and get his tail up again and show us that bit of Brazilian flair and that bit of magic of in those games where it's so hard to make something happen. He's where you want that to come from. So other than that, no, I think Brentford is like you say, I mean, it's become a very, very important game for us, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, I usually hate the phrase season starts here, but I do think it's applicable. And I'm certainly looking at it like this, like, right, when we've got the 2-week international break, Nuno can get his backroom staff in, because he's got no coaches at the minute. Get them in. And then what we figured out randomly during the player ratings is the fact that playing on a Monday will actually give us an advantage, because you say we were playing Brentford on Saturday, the players get back from the international break Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday in dribs and drabs. So Nuno would have 1 or 2 days with them in training, and that's it. But because we're playing on the Monday, he will have the Saturday, Sunday with them as well. So he's actually going to squeeze a couple of training sessions out of the players together before that game against Brentford. So there is maybe an advantage to playing Brentford on the Monday night, actually. It gives Nuno a bit more time on the training ground with those away on internationals, because Thomas Souček could be a very important player under Nuno. But in training so far, he's probably not really focused on him much, because when you're preparing for the Arsenal game, you're not going to use Souček because he's suspended. So there's no point. He's going to be almost like the mannequin in the other team, saying, right, you go in the other team. We're going to set up our attacking strategies. You're in the defensive side of it, kind of thing. So, but now he can have a look at him. He's away with Czechia. So he's not going to really get to grips with Souček and a few others. So actually, I think Brentford season starts here for Nuno. I've written the last 2 games off. I complained about the board doing it, but then we've got Nuno in. I thought 1 point looked all right against Everton, got beat by the best team in the league. whatever. It's over and done with as far as I'm concerned. But I'm looking forward to that Brentford game, actually. I've got a little bit of spice for it. I don't know how to describe it. I'm up for it. I'm hoping we can, Paqueta, turn up. Fernandez, turn up. Somerville, turn up. We need the big players. Bowen, get a goal, get an assist, play well for 90 minutes rather than 5 minutes. We need some big performances from our big players and something tactical from Nuno, which says, don't worry, West Ham fans, you're going to be all right this season. This is what I'm going to produce for you. He said, I want to make it hell. We've got to make it hell that night. The team has to really get their sleeves rolled up and beat Brentford and put in a good performance as well.
Yeah. I mean, like you say, your season starts here, but you're starting with a handicap, Geo. You're starting on minus points because you're already in the relegation zone. So it is season starts here, but we've got some serious work to do. What worries me is, like you say, you need a big performance that Brentford game because you don't want to be going into that Leeds game feeling that pressure because it will be, Leeds, while they're not the best football team in the world, they make it hard. They'll get in your face. Yeah. They'll make it super difficult for us. And you don't want to be going into that game feeling a bit sorry for yourself. I'll tell you that now. So that Brentford game is more important than I think people realise.
It's huge.
And it is. It's a massive game. So, yeah, like I say, I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to seeing what Nuno comes up with because, like I say, I expect it to be a little bit different. And we need to start quick. I think we've got to come out the blocks. I think we've got to come out and not be too defensive minded. I think we've got to go and get in their face and try and get a bit of momentum going. So, look, we'll see. But it's time for West Ham to show a bit of character now. We need him to get for the first time in a while, Joe, we need a manager to go and start getting the best out of the players. We need to see a new Kilman. We need to see a Kilman who looks like the Kilman of old, the man that we spent all that money on. We need to see Mavropanos continuing with confident performances. We need to see Diouf being given the range to get up there and actually make things happen going forward. We need Somerville to be on the front foot. We need to find the best out of Bowen again now. And then he's got to find a midfield that is effective. And like you say, Souček could be really important to that. For all of the negative elements of Souček that we all know what his weaknesses are, at the moment when you're struggling for goal threat, he can really add something. We know what he can do in the box.
I said it a couple of times and no one's disagreed with me. I said, when we played Everton, I said, whichever manager had Souček on the bench might have won that game. Whether it be Moyes or Nuno, if one of them had Souček sat there for that last 15 minutes, it might have been enough to nick it because he's a good finisher. When he's in that box, he is a good finisher. The issue isn't him in the box. It's in between the boxes that I think is the problem sometimes. But I'd rather have a bench with Souček on it than not on it because you look at the bench at the minute and you're looking for goals and inspiration. There isn't anything. Like, we've all got hopes for Marshall and we hope Guilherme comes good, but the reality is there isn't goals guaranteed from either of them. There isn't creativity guaranteed. Even Callum Wilson, he did well against Nottingham Forest, but when he played against Crystal Palace, I think, he was awful. So it's hit and miss. But Souček will be the one that you turn around and go, do you know what? That guy can go on there and get a goal. So he's going to be the first sub. And I think that's what Nuno might use him as. The only thing that's a bit strange is Nuno usually scores first and defends. So I don't know how that's going to work. But I'd rather have Souček available than not. So that's a boost for post-international break. Anyway, thank you very much for joining us. You got any questions for myself and Frankie? We're going to do this podcast next week using your questions. Please do put them in the comments below. But thank you very much. I'll catch up with you next week. Are you going to say bye to everyone?
Bye.